start with the NFC North, which was the best division in the NFL, maybe the NFC East. Bit of a toss-up there, maybe AFC West. Shit, there's a lot of good divisions in this. There wasn't a lot of parity, I'll say that, in this year's NFL. So we'll start with the Detroit Lions, the number one seed in the NFC. Their preseason line was 10.5 games, and they blew past that. They went 15-2, and we both predicted the over. Of course, we were both right. So what did we get right about the Lions?
Yeah, I think we were both thought, Lions, great offense. Defense was going to be pretty solid as well. So I think then that's what happened. I mean, the Lions, even despite the injuries to their defense, somehow ended the season with only 2 losses. Like, that's amazing. But they're just an offensive juggernaut, and that's what we were saying in the preseason, and that's what they showed up in this season, right? They're just an offensive juggernaut. Even if their defense gives up 40 points, they're probably dropping 50 points on you. So that's what the Lions did, and that's how they got to 15-2 here.
And they ended up, I think, with 17 guys on injured reserve, which is just bonkers. It's an insane number, and it's big name guys. I think their starting middle linebacker, Malcolm Rodriguez, Aiden Hutchinson, David Montgomery missed some time. I think he's going to be back this weekend, but this was a team where I think they would have been forgiven, I guess is the word, if they did struggle down the stretch and they did end up, falling short. Or I think we always thought they were going to make the playoffs, but maybe if they didn't win the division, but instead they just went the complete other direction and took over the division, which was, again, probably one of the best in the NFL. They had a couple fluke wins here and there. Maybe that Thanksgiving win against Chicago was a little fluky, but nothing else was fluky. I think everything about their performance is sustainable. The fact that they don't have to go outdoors for the rest of the season, and they are one of the teams that have a rare home field advantage. And I think this was your preseason Super Bowl pick, so it's looking good.
Yep, it's looking good.
All right. The Minnesota Vikings, their over-under coming into the season was 7.5, and both of us were laughing. Both of us went hard under on this. They, of course, went way over, almost doubling their predicted win total, going 14-3, and they probably would have went 16-1 if it wasn't for the Detroit Lions. So what did we get so wrong about the Vikings here?
We were absolutely wrong about Sam Darnold. I think that was the biggest issue we had was, Sam Darnold's a quarterback. Sam Darnold's not good. And man, he came out on fire this season. I think the other thing we got wrong a little bit was I think we were underestimating how good their defense was. Their defense showed up in a major way. They bailed them out of a few games where even Sam Darnold didn't look great. So they definitely got bailed out for a few games by their D as well. So I think Sam Darnold was a lot better than we anticipated, and their defense was better than we anticipated. And those two things give them a good outcome here. And also, I think they had a slightly favorable schedule, right, as well. So,
well, I think along with everybody else, completely underestimated Sam Darnold, of course, like you said. But I think that's expected, right? It's Sam Darnold. It's kind of like, okay, if somebody's bad for 5 years, 6 years, and then all of a sudden he's good, it's not our fault that we got it wrong. But the defense, I guess we should have taken a closer look at the defense. They do have some playmakers. Van Ginkel's out there, Harrison Smith, Greenard. So they had guys. And of course, Brian Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. Maybe not the best head coach, which I think some folks will go back and forth with you on that. But we definitely didn't give the defense enough credit. Everything else, we're like, okay, Aaron Jones, he's good. Of course, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all the pieces were there. We just didn't believe in Sam Darnold. And the funny thing is, the Zodiac GM, who I spoke to earlier this week, he was high on this team coming into the season. So, I mean, maybe there's something to it. I don't know what the signs were, but he was saying the synergy was there with Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson. So it was all there for us to see. And they end up 9th in offense and 5th in defense. And I mean, it's unfortunate that they're not a division winner. They're not going to get to host a game. But before we move on to Green Bay, what's your take on that? Do you think the NFL should just seed by record?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think the NBA had this problem like a couple years back, right? Where it was like, 10 years ago, where they were like, the lower ranked, didn't have the best record, but they won the division and they were hosting the first round or whatever, right? I think the NFL's got to do away with it, right? Winning division gets you into the playoffs, but doesn't guarantee you hosting a game.
Yeah, I was thinking something along the lines of if the difference in the record is more than 3 wins or two wins, I think is fair. That's I mean, 2 wins is a decent percentage of your schedule. Maybe 3 if you want to be extreme, because you're like, okay, that's 20% of your schedule or something. Like in this case, obviously, I think they're traveling to maybe they end up in Arizona because of the fires, but that's a 4-game difference. So in that case, they would host the game, but of course, LA still gets in the playoffs because they won their division, even if they were 8-9 or whatever. So yeah, I think that's fair. What do you think? Like a 3-game difference, a 3-win difference in between the teams?
I wouldn't even do that. I'd just be like, hey, if like the Vikings were 10-6 and the Rams were 9-7, I'd still let the Vikings host. Like I'd be like, better record, you host.
I get it. I can think there's arguments on both sides. All right, for sure. The Green Bay Packers, they predicted over under, or the line before the season was 9.5. They go over it by a game and a half, end up 11-6. We both went over. I think we both liked this team coming in. So what did we get right about this team?
Yeah, we were on the Jordan Love hype train, right? So he played pretty well. Had some injuries. Josh Jacobs, we knew was gonna do pretty well, and he did. I think he exceeded what I thought he was gonna do. He played even better than I anticipated, and we knew they had a pretty solid defense, and all those things held up true in the season. And that's why the Packers were an 11-win team.
Yeah, I had really high expectations for him. I was saying like 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. I mean, he didn't quite get there. He had about 3,400 yards, so I maybe need to pump the brakes on it. There was some games where he looked great. Some games he didn't look so great. I think some of it had to do with the injury, because even if he only missed 2 games, I think the first few games back, as a fantasy owner, he always had that red questionable or even the doubtful tag on his next to his name. So I think maybe next year he'll probably be able to step more into his role and hopefully stay healthy. But yeah, there was a lot to like about this team. They end up 8th in offense in points scored and 6th in points allowed. So balanced team, just like the Vikings and the Lions. So again, just another case for this being the best division in the NFL, but we're spot on. We'll give us credit for that. Last in the division, the Chicago Bears. So coming into the season, their line was 8.5 wins. We both went under, but I think for different reasons. What did we get wrong about this team? Or sorry, what did we get right? Because we both predicted the under.
I think we both knew Caleb Williams was going to struggle a bit. I thought he was going to struggle a lot. You were a little more confident in Caleb, but I was not a believer in Caleb this year. The Bears O-line, I think you were also like...
Before you continue, you actually predicted his stat line exactly.
Did I really? What?
Except for the rushing touchdowns. I think you went a little crazy. You said 10 rushing touchdowns. I think you might have misspoke, but you said 3,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, and that's exactly what he had.
There you go. Damn. Okay.
I said 4,030, but yeah, you were on point. So yeah, sorry. Continue.
I mean, he had a good season by all accounts. It's just, I don't know, their offense was weird. They never looked like they were ever in sync. I think a lot of that has to do with their O-line problems. I mean, Caleb was running for his life out there. He had to make plays. They were down big, so that's why he got a lot of yards down at the end there. I think I don't know. They got to fix the offensive line, and I think everything else will fall into place for them. Their defense is average. It can probably be better, but it was average. They made some boneheaded plays, right? Like they give that Hail Mary touchdown to the Commanders, and they lose that game. That's just like their season in a nutshell, right? Boneheaded plays, and that's a lot of what they did.
Yeah, 3 games you can point to that would have swung. I mean, they still would have finished under if they won those games, but of course the Hail Mary, which they were 4-2 at the time, and then they ended up going on a 10-game losing streak after that. So that broke the team mentally and spiritually. The other one was a Thanksgiving loss to Green Bay, where because of clock management issues, they just didn't call a timeout, and they could have kicked a field goal to send it into overtime, and then they did it again. I'm forgetting the team that they did it against, but it was the interim coach that made the same mistake. I'm totally blanking on who the third game was against, but I said the defense was going to be good. They ended up being 13th, which probably would have been better with a better offense. But yeah, we both predicted some struggles, but again, you were spot on with the stat line. But I think there's a lot to be excited about. I don't think my family and my in-laws are all Bears fans, and they're split. Some of them are really negative and pessimistic on Caleb, and some of them are super high on him. But I'm like, that's his rookie year, considering all the turmoil, the offensive line getting sacked. I think I said 68 times. Like, I think that was not quite a record. David Carr, I think, has the record for like 73 times his rookie year, but pretty damn close. So, what do you think? Do you think there's a lot to be excited about here?
I think so. I mean, they got a good young quarterback. I think he's just going to grow. They just got to build that line. They got to protect the guy, right? And then they got a decent young wide receiver in Roma. Defense is looking pretty decent. Add a piece there or two. There's a lot to be excited about, right? The only thing that doesn't excite me is they play in the NFC North, so one of the toughest divisions. I mean, I'm sure the Vikings and Packers will regress and the Lions will regress, so maybe there's some opportunity there. But I mean, I'd be excited about the Bears' outlook in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.